Just a really short video of this, but I'm finding out quite a bit about a lot of other charters that I didn't know about. Obviously, I don't even really want to learn history or law, but I'm having to just to prove as rights and what the rights are and what they originate from, just to add clarity. Finding out a lot now. There's a lot of things that now I've even found them mentioned. I found things mentioned, and actually when I'm trying to find them now, I'm actually having difficulty finding them in full writ. So I know that I haven't heard any people mention these before. I know that university people, students, professors, historians will know about these, but for sure, I only came across them mentioned really sort of digging into some other things. And now what I'm finding is when I'm actually typing it in, what it's called, it's not necessarily that easy just to find, like, oh, there it is, you know, they're a bit harder to get the full wording for. But a lot of these charters were copied, like Magna Carta. Some Magna Carta clauses were reissued and then copied around again. But what I wanted this video to be about is this, right? I came across this Maidstone Corporation, but it's got like the mayor and the aldermen and, you know, the justices of the peace. They're operating in Maidstone and and so forth. And I'm like, why is it called the corporation? I'm like, that's odd. They met in the they met in one of the town hall buildings or whatever, but that got burned down. So then they were meeting in like pubs and things like that. If that happened anywhere, like they might meet in a pub to have their court or whatever and things like that, and or over buildings. Like, I think one was called the Woolpack or something. So I've got on to Stratford now, and Stratford is where Shakespeare's from. But before Shakespeare, it was established, but then it ended up not doing so well. But then it got this other charter from Edward, and these charters basically, a charter is almost like a commission, or really it's like being incorporated. The town or the city is given, so like the town is given a charter to operate under, and certain liberties and rules and rights are almost given to like the town, or it's like confirming Magna Carta. But I think how you've got to look at it is it's almost kind of like a company or a business, but under the King Royal, you know, it's given license, you know what I mean? It's almost like a license, incorporated. I didn't really understand that before. I've just thought, you know, Parliament's knocking legislation out, but different places were given different charters, right? At the time, they had certain legislation for the whole country, right? But then certain towns were given certain charters. Because remember, you had like bylaws as well, remember? You know, like, you remember bylaws, like in Wales and areas that aren't part of England and so forth. I think they were giving these charters might have slightly varied, you know, like, because they reissued Magna Carta, but with changes. Now, like, some of it's in effect, but only one of the certain versions. There's actually a lot I've got to say about Magna Carta now to add in to the current legal proceedings, like on what it's meant to be founded and based on in meaning. But this has actually been really insightful to the company certificates. So, like, Companies House, right? So, Companies House, I've got a certificate, right? Incorporated company, but I don't use it. It's like on those guys on Verbs, you know, they say, like, have dormant companies or whatever. But I've got one, and the thing is, it's limited. You're limited to what you can and can't do, a limited company. It's like a charter, you're only granted certain liberties. I've been looking at some of the acts of law for the Companies Act 2000, and there's certain rules for members of the company to be able to vote and have polls and things like that, but it still does grant other rights and special enactments as well. If you want to petition a company, or, you know, like for workers' rights and unions, you know, I think Amazon were trying to stop workers' rights and unions from having the rights. this helps a lot with YouTube and Facebook and rights on YouTube and Facebook, because really what's happening, like, it's like a driving license, right? You can't drive without a driving license, right? You can go where you want, and you can, you know, you can buy your own car, right? And you can go places and buy stuff. You can use the car for business, but you're only licensed to drive it from the government, right? The company certificate of incorporation, limited companies and so forth, is like a driving license for a company, right? It's like, it's still their company. They bought it, they own it, they can do what they want. You know, you can't tell them what to do. But they're only licensed like a driving license with the company. Like, they've got to, like, I've got to follow the, you know, I've got to follow the law when I'm driving, right? Unless it's a particular special circumstance, like when I was doing my investigation and I'm claiming special rights, like the police do, right? Or ambulance or fire, right? Investigation. So, or an other emergency vehicle, you know, AA parking at the side of the road or whatever, right? So, the company certificate, you've got to see these corporations and company certificates as a driving license. Really, Facebook and YouTube, to have a business operating in England and the United Kingdom, their certificate of their company is like a driving license, right? So there are certain things that they've got, the workers have got to have rights, like, you know, they've got to have like medical rights, workers, and, you know, they've got employment rights. There's other legislation, all the legislation of the country, right, what applies to businesses and companies, like the Companies Act. Now, the thing with YouTube and Facebook, they're trying to make out that, you know, we don't have right to petition on there, and they can use their policy to remove certain rights from us that we can't have when we use their business services or in their business, right? But actually, that Companies Act 2000, that actually says that, you know, that it states they can't take certain rights away. It says that in there. I read it day before yesterday, right? And because I was I only got into it because I found something about polling in companies and voting in companies, right? And the Public Meeting Act as well. You can't break up meetings because a company can't break up its own. You know, like if he's having a company meeting with members, like you can't unlawfully remove people or stop them from laying evidence because, you know, like if it's evidence for, you know, legal purposes in the company, you've got a right to lay the evidence, you know. And I'm like, but it's talking about members. And I'm like, well, how do you become a member? And is that employees or is it only like shareholders or members? You see, you've got members of political parties as well, remember. Well, the thing is, when you petition a company, right, Extinction Rebellion and Just Stop Oil and Insulate Britain are doing these public remonstrations, like change the first letter from demonstration, remonstrations. That's what they're called in the 1661 Tumultuous Petitioning Act, a public remonstration. Like, we call them demonstrations now. It's like basically a, you know, public appeal in public, right? So they can actually, the thing is, when they're making political representations to companies, it's almost like the charter of, you know, like really the company acting under the license of the government. Really, it is a division of the... You see, look, when you look at these charters of, you know, Stratford, they're given a charter by the king, and then they're electing, like, aldermen and representatives and justices of the peace and, you know, like, sheriff and sergeant at mace and so forth, elected all under a proper thing. Well, the way the government's got the Companies Act set up and so forth, they've got, like, when you form a company, then you know, you nominate your shares, shareholders, executive, you know, there's got to be a named secretary and so forth. So it's actually under government. Do you understand? It's like a certificate, a charter, right, when you get like a town mayor and so forth and so forth. The Vubs channel talks about all this, but I mean, no matter, I've watched all these programs, but it's better if you like, everyone kind of like understands it from their own perspective, and I've got into it through Stratford upon Avon, and when I'm looking for justices of the peace and so forth, you know, the whole thing with verbs and so forth, I think verbs probably already gets it and already got it, but the way he was communicating it and talking about it, I don't think that he put it across in a particular certain way. It's better that through my own inquiries on rights, I've got really into the Jurats now, the jurors, and who's got the authority of, you know, justices of the peace and so forth. And then, like, getting into the towns, you know, all the assizes going round on behalf of the king, and the quarter sessions on behalf of the king, all the judges going round, and knights and so forth. But every village had its own justices of the peace and mayor and so forth. But they can only make decisions on local matters and petty common law matters, right, in the local villages and towns. If it's a serious crime or a matter to do with the whole country, you know, then you petition the king, and this is why you got to wait for the assizes really to come round. Or you can get permission in the Tumultuous Act. You could get permission from 3 local justices, or wait for the assizes to come round before you could petition, you know, Parliament in central London. So only certain people could vote as well. You know, only freemen could vote, or landholders could vote for elected MPs as well. But when we're talking about rights on platforms like YouTube and Facebook, really the certificate of incorporation or limited company, etc., it's only like a driving licence. And in so much as they can't actually have a business and operate it without that licence, right? And under that licence, they've got to abide by the laws of England, because it's in England, under English laws, and under His Majesty's Government, Companies House. So all the rights, like Public Meeting Act, all that's figured into the Companies Act 2000 as well. And the thing is, the type of companies that some of them have got, it's not like it's not a private club. A private club, you have to pay to gain access and go in. YouTube, you only need an internet connection. You don't even have to have an account. You don't have to be paying for internet. You can go into a library. You can have, like, free Wi-Fi. Anyone can look at it. It's not a private club, because it's like anyone can look and read, right? Now, posting stuff on there, you have to have an account and sign up to their terms. But if there's nothing that prevents people having meeting, talking about whatever, they allow political discussion. When you're engaging in political discussion, the rights that cover political discussion apply. You can't remove them from it unless you have to remove political discussion, right? You know, and so forth. And a lot of that Public Meeting Act applies to businesses as well. But the thing is, as well as the Public Meeting Act, when it's something in connection with Parliament, like petitioning Parliament, right, you get this 1688 Bill of Rights on top of that as well, with free speech is added in. There's also for elections is separate, because for elections, anything for elections has got to have separate funding, because it's all got to be managed under the election funding. The Public Meetings Act was separated into political for elections, but it doesn't mention political for petitioning. But the normal Public Meeting Act applies pretty much in the same way as in the Bill of Rights, but it's even for business as well, or for any other meetings. But obviously, like, you know, if people are having community groups and they're opposing planning and they've got all the evidence and they're looking at getting judicial reviews or anything like that, you can't break the meetings up. That Public Meetings Act applies for businesses as well, even for their own business and business. So Zuckerberg and YouTube can't say that the Public Meeting Act doesn't apply to YouTube, because then they wouldn't be able to use it in a YouTube meeting, you know? But that means that, you know, if you're in a YouTube meeting and an executive needs to lay evidence on the table to the lawyers, that means that it could be removed or prevent the evidence being laid. That's actually illegal as well. But I don't think they've got the free speech of Parliament, though. When you're doing a petition to Parliament, you've got the parliamentary free speech because it's in connection with facts and circumstances that are to be laid to Parliament as well. So, I mean, you get it on top of that. So, it really, Facebook and YouTube, I just can't believe that Nick Clegg has not, when he first started at YouTube, didn't do something about, you see, it's an offence to encourage and incite people to remove people from meetings and prevent evidence being laid. And Zuckerberg on Facebook he's designed that platform, and it's been very encouraging of people to remove people and censor them by design. And in fact, he's tried to change the attitude. He's acted to influence the attitude of the nation, or the world even, to encourage encourageable behaviour. And I've suffered quite a lot in many groups when I actually, in 99% of those occasions, I actually, didn't do anything in the slightest bit wrong whatsoever, or harm anyone, or prevent anyone else from engaging, or anything offensive. It's just quirks of people. People have been encouraged and given these powers and authorities that they aren't really responsible enough to be in command of, and then you get mixtures of admins. They haven't been sworn in. The thing with being a juror or sworn in and taking an oath in front of people is that you will do things according to law. Now, the problem with these admins on Facebook and YouTube is that they don't know the law. And what they're doing is they're in charge of YouTube groups, or Facebook groups, YouTube community pages and so forth, and Facebook groups, and they haven't taken an oath, and they don't know the law, and they're actually censoring people and pulling them out of those groups unlawfully. That's the difference. I don't like being an admin. I made my website information only, so it doesn't have any members. I've just throw the information up there to prevent anyone from reading it. If they want to say anything, I say, well, make yourself heard on different platforms. But I say I put it up for purposes. It's like a notice board. It's the equivalent of a notice board on my own. I've always had a little forum, but when in Facebook groups, I've never wanted to be an administrator, really, and have been in charge of people. I just like going into groups and see what's going on, chatting with a few people, and then whatever, having a nosy round, and if I've got what to say, or see what people are putting or whatever. But I don't like it when I say something or try and suggest something useful, and you get idiots or people who don't understand it, and I'm trying to explain it to get them to understand, and it just goes over their head. They're like, "Do," and then someone else will you get idiots in there, and it's unfair if it either gets disrupted or you get removed or censored. And that's actually what the law's there for. That law is there to stop people preventing you from laying informations or trying to explain or educate that information, and actually from participating. As long as I'm not blocking anyone else from attending the group meeting and not censoring their information, this is why I don't like being in charge of groups, because okay, if people are spamming with loads of stuff, it's getting in the way, but really it's not too bad as long as you can talk to the other people. When you add in political discussion and debate to do with government, then you've got the free speech on top of that. This is why I'm thinking that guy who was on Colchester Council Watch the other day, who's running for Police and Crime Commissioner in Gloucestershire, if it's a council meeting, His Majesty's local council government or parliament, then it's got... They're trying to make out that councillors are treated different from MPs, but that's not true. I think they're being misled, because councillors, it's got the mace in there. They're acting with authority of the king. I think the MPs are lying to the councillors about their authority. And also, when you turn up at a council meeting, it's like that video I've got of that girl in America, when she's like... she's like, you can't censor my speech. That's how it should be. And that's actually what the law is in England, but it's not getting acknowledged as that. And you're getting all these police officers who are trying to for council calling the police on people, as long as they're not preventing anyone else from giving evidence or stopping them speaking, you'd have to physically go over to them and, actually, put your arms around them or, put your hand over their mouth to stop them transacting information. I was thinking last night, what if you've got, like, someone with you who's got Tourette's, cunt! What if you go into a council meeting with someone with Tourette's, like if it's a relative or something, and then they're going through the council meeting and it's like, arse! Like on Father Ted. Now the police going to arrest them. They've got a medical right. They've got a medical certificate, if they've got Tourette's. So it's not preventing the meeting from carrying on. It might be annoying, but that's a meeting, when I saw that video from Colchester Council Watch the other day, and that guy, I wouldn't mind speaking to those two guys because they do know a lot. They know a lot of things that I don't know, but I reckon I could update them and educate them with things that I know that they don't know. And a lot of thing with Verbs as well. Verbs knows a lot, but he's been speaking about a lot of these things, but you can speak about it and know it, but you can still not, like, click. Like, I've been listening to him and it's been, it's not been going totally over my head, but unless you can, like, put it into a working model in your mind, like, and the things that you're more interested in, you might not see it relevant. I only now see it a little bit more relevant to what Vubs' channel has been discussing to what I'm looking at now because of, your forming of your, your mayor and your justices and so forth and so forth. And if they're in a corporation and these charters which have been given to different towns or so forth, but now we've got, legislation which applies to the whole country. Each town get a special charter or whatever. And then there were places that didn't actually fall under the crown, like over in Ireland. In these times now that we're looking at here, before Shakespeare, some further parts of Ireland over the west coast were still Celtic. I think some of them might not have been fully Christianised. There was still some of the Celtic clans. That would have been interesting. I think they just about started going over to the Americas. I think they just about started going over to America and setting up colonies in America, just as Ireland was coming fully under, from the clans. Basically, they said that some of the clans were still in effect in the time of Queen Elizabeth. So, that would have been interesting to see how they were, like, I know that, Scotland, the north of Scotland has always been quite, they've still retained the bag, they've got the style and the tartan and everything like that. But it would have been interesting to see, I think those people did definitely go back in time a little bit when they rocked up on the beach in America, with the Indians and so forth. But, kind of interesting that there was still, just before the time of Shakespeare, still actually the untouched clans, so to say. But there's some interesting. I've actually now, for the health rights and medical, and all this food that is affecting us negatively, there's some interesting clauses in Magna Carta about being harmed by foods and merchants. And in times of war, if there are any merchants around the country, foreign merchants, like you're allowed to, make sure if they're if we're safe from them or not, and things like that. I'm starting to think now, there's all these wars going on, and there is definitely some sort of global conflict happening between these, powers. Black Rock Vanguard, it's definitely a force. And as Charles said, beyond leaders, a military-style campaign beyond leaders, which is beyond a military-style campaign beyond leaders or the global private sector. So if it's acting in a military style and manner, that's warlike, or military style is military. And if it's beyond the leaders of our country, and if it is coming from a corporate private sector, that's war, because it's military. Now, if they're operating in and around it throughout England, right, and I've got influence and doing trade here, whether it's digitally, online, devices, mechanisms, software, advertising, influence, foods, franchises, right, and it's harmful to us, right, this is in Magna Carta, and it's any harm to us, right, then we can actually apprehend or stop them. Now, wrap your head around that for Dr. Tess Lowry's, medical rights and, act of settlement, not allowed to give up his rights to foreign countries. If you find there's any threat from a foreign force that has a military capacity, and, when someone states it's a military-style campaign, why would you have a military-style campaign coming from beyond our leaders, from a corporate private sector, right? Then we're allowed to act and intervene, and we've got to, inquisition these people of what's going on and what's happening. So I would say to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., check out that Magna Carta 1300 version clause and look at what's happening with the World Health Organization and so forth, but also any harm that might be being done to us through these food products that he's been taking legal action through environmental health. Well, that's products, that's trade. That's products and traders that are harming our environment, the water, right? The soil, the plants. That's trade and commerce merchants that are causing harm, right? That's in Magna Carta, right? So when these companies are suing our government because our government's making laws that are affecting their potential future profits, and I'm saying, just a minute, why aren't we getting the NHS, or why aren't we getting Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to sue the government because it's affecting our future health, or sue these companies because it's affecting our health? In Magna Carta, I know that these clauses, there's only 4 clauses still in effect here, but the principles of Magna Carta, you've actually got something to protect you from the effects of foreign merchants and trade, which may be harmful. And when Charles is saying, no, it's a military-style campaign from beyond our leaders, which is coming from the corporate private sector, that's it, harmful. I think that's hit the nail on the head, to be honest. If Robert F. Kennedy Jr. can't come up with something from Magna Carta, harmful merchants' products that are harming our health and environment, which is a threat to the country, coming from beyond leaders, according to Charles, it's a military-style campaign from private sector, then I don't know what is. That's a war. And this is why you've got the 1700 Act of Settlement here to prevent them even taking his rights away, these foreign entities. So, these charters I'm trying to find, they explain a little bit more detail than Magna Carta. It's effectively like Magna Carta when it comes to, your judgment of your peers and so forth, but it adds more detail into it. Some of these charters are adding a little bit more detail into the selection of the juries, and because one of them says that I think they made a decision in the 1700s in Maidstone area that it was decided that this is what got me into this little bit on this whole part of it in the last sort of day or whatever, or the last 24 hours, is that it said that they'd made a legal decision, or a legal decision had been made in, this is like early 1700s, but referring back to Magna Carta and the others, I think this is almost like getting a resolution. It might have been a resolution from Parliament or something similar along those lines, that they decided that all Jurats were effectively justices of the peace, So, like, jurors were the equivalent of a justice of the peace, although you still need, like, proper procedures. And for trials, you have to have a proper trial, right? But justices of the peace could make certain orders, civil orders or payment orders on certain matters, not the trial of a criminal, but other matters, you know, monies to be paid or other disputes. They could make an order that themselves. They could decide on it. But I think for a trial, it has to be, there's a certain format for trials of criminals, you know, different from like civil matters. But I think that when you got those petitions in the Tumultuous Act 1661, when you have to get it approved by 3 justices, I think you can get it signed by 3 justices before you can petition Parliament, or if the assizes or quarter sessions are coming round. The thing is, you know, you might not have been able to get those local justices to agree with it, so you might have had to wait until the assizes or quarter sessions came around, or had a proper session with a full grand jury or whatever, you know. So this is interesting. And I'll just throw this in here now. I actually went to Cub Scouts, and it was set up by Baden-Powell, Baron Baden-Powell. The Cub Scouts is an organisation under the authority of the House of Lords and by design of the House of Lords. And you get sworn in. You usually go when you're young, though, as a child. You don't do it for grown-ups. So you get sworn in at a young age. The thing with when you go as a juror in a court, you get sworn in and then you're discharged after. But what I'm finding out now is the Jurats are actually for life. You're a Jurat for life, and they have a pool of them. And, you know, they've got so many working in, you know, who do the, you know, in the town or village or whatever. And obviously, you know, as people get old, you know, some of them pass away, and then like sometimes they were like, you know, they were starting with quite a few, and then they ended up only being like a smaller number left, and then they didn't end up getting more people sworn in until, you know, later on. I don't know how it worked exactly for choosing who's, you know, a lot of these positions were unpaid, you know, they were unpaid positions. It's like duty, you know, like duty roles. So I'm starting to think that, you know, I actually now believe that when you're sworn in, I think that oath's valid. I think Baden-Powell, being under the authority of the House of Lords, and his brother, I think, was a King's Counsel, and they invented the Cub Scouts to get, you know, young lads sworn in. I don't know if they did it in the Brownies as well, but I mean, I think the oath. I'm going to look into it. I think that oath's good enough that, you know, it's good enough for effect. And you have it for life, because you are discharged. I don't think they discharge you. You know. So that's something to look into. If that's the case, that means that from the very first time that I got a driving offence. And also, it depends how serious the crime. That I think you can lose your position if you're guilty of serious offences. But if I'm investigating legal road signage and I'm sworn in, then and I'm a witness to judges making illegal actions, like, you know, Watson, then I am, you know, I'm investigating him. He's not investigating me, you know, and I've actually been gathering evidence on them. So, and the thing is, the most interesting twist on the whole saga is that my very first speeding, it wasn't speeding, the very first letter I got through, the very first letter, you know, like with the coat of arms on it from the police that came through when I'd, you know, pretty much just, you know, around the time I first started driving or working driving, right, was from bottom of the moor or top of the moor in Oldham. And in my investigations later in life, I found out that exact location was unlawfully set up and misleading, and I don't think that I committed that offence anyway, because no traffic light changed. But it was set up illegally. It was an unlawful setup, and I later found out many of them are unlawfully set up, and they've been given illegal evidence. I actually believe now from Magna Carta, this is what I've got. From Magna Carta, and also from the claim of right in Scotland, right? But there's some more clauses in Magna Carta that, you know, they weren't allowed to take your cart off you, the use of your cart, and then in this version to do with 1300 version, the year 1300 version, that they could take the cart off people who weren't priests or other officials, but they had to compensate them for it with money. They had to give them money if they were going to use it or take it off them, or to form wagons out of the horses or carts or whatever. I think they could. They're reckoning that they could, but they had to compensate for it or whatever. But not if you're like a priest or in another position or so forth. They couldn't take the carts off them. And you're only supposed to for offences that aren't serious. You can only really get judged by your peers. When they removed the juries from magistrates' courts, that really was terrible. And when the police chiefs are getting you to confess, you know, send a photo in, you committed a crime, confess, pay the fine. Firstly, if you don't pay it within a certain time, it's going to go up. But that's still nothing to do with going to court or not. So they're messing around with favours and payments and so forth for confessions, and you're not getting a fair trial by your own peers. And it's never. The thing is, I know that this is the thing. This is another thing that I need to say. This video is covering quite a lot of things. This particular video that I'm recording now, like Facebook, YouTube as well, but it's kind of like a big mix of all kind of things. But these are all the things that I'm on with now. But this is probably the most serious out of all of them, because this is like, you know, it doesn't even matter about all the illegal road signage or them giving false evidence through the courts, police witnesses, or the rest of it. Because, so, you can only be on the gravity of the offence, the seriousness of the offence. Well, if you just do petty speeding or a small speeding, it's never that serious, because, you know, they only want to just give you a fine and these what you call penalty points, right? You never have to go to court. It's never that serious. But when you do it 2 or 3 times, then they say, oh, no, you're going to face losing your driving licence. But you might have just done like a small petty thing, like, you know, if you, I don't know, just stop on a lane or something. I mean, that's not too serious. Or, you know, it might not have even been that dangerous, you know, whatever it is, you know. And the thing is, what they say is, oh, no, but you're a repeat offender, Yeah, but, you know, you can slap someone on the face, you know, like tap someone on the face 18 times and it's really, 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 really annoying, but you still haven't stolen someone's car, you know. And I think another thing is this, with driving for a job, right, they've got that clause in the law that, you know, if you've got to keep to a schedule anyway, that it can be used as a defence. But the thing with driving for a job is you're in constant jeopardy of law all the time, because you're out on the road all the time, all day, whereas someone else who works in an office drives to work, goes in the office, they're there all day, they get in the car, then they drive home, then they go pick the kids up from school. So they're not at jeopardy of law all the time, right? There's also the jeopardy of law clause that comes into effect. Now, they might say, well, that's why we give you 3 chances, you know, 3 chances to rack up points and then go to court. Yeah, but the offence is never any more serious. The offence is never any more serious. It's always petty. So why should you even, you know, if you're going to let people off with a fine once, one more than let them off with a fine every time, right? And you say, well, you did it loads of times. Well, I know you're going to do it loads of times. I'm in jeopardy of law. That's my job. You know, I'm at jeopardy of law all the time. You know, But now apparently they don't even want us to have the privilege of driving. You know, you can't even, not even fit to reverse backwards after all the food they've been. You're in jeopardy of health, you know, by all this stuff they're feeding you, and then getting the Google Maps to do it for you, and then you know your memory goes like Biden, and you can't even, you know, they're stealing the knowledge from us and putting them on the machine, so the machine tells you, but then they're uneducated. They're reverse educating us. So then the machine's the key, and the machine is everything, and we literally will end up like, you know, a monkey with a banana in its mouth playing table tennis on a computer game, you know, ping ball on a screen, like, you know, finally when they've got the androids to replace us all, you know, we've been reduced to amoebas. That's the way they're going with it. I can see it happening. You know, they've already got people like, you know, like with banana in the mouth, acting like a monkey, blocking people from Facebook groups, pushing buttons, like monkey doesn't like this, monkey doesn't like that, you know, when it's illegal, because, you know, these monkeys aren't fit to judge other people, members of the group, because they haven't taken an oath and they don't know the law and the rights, you know, they're just, this is the problem, you know, and then you have to try subpoena them, but then you can't get their addresses. You know, so I think the whole police setup on the basis of Magna Carta is